The city of Marlow 3 never really slept. Even at night, light lines from sky cars moved across the dark like slow shooting stars. Tall towers reached up into the low clouds, and signs in many languages glowed in bright colors. Humans walked the streets, laughing, talking, buying food from street stalls. Robots rolled by on smooth wheels, carrying boxes, cleaning the sidewalks, or guiding tourists. In the middle of all this noise and light, one girl walked alone. Her name was Lyra. At first glance, she did not look very strange. She wore a simple dark jacket, black pants, and old sneakers with worn-out soles. Her hair was tied back under a gray cap, and she kept her head a little low as she moved through the crowd. People passed her and did not pay attention. She liked it that way. She needed it that way. But if someone had really looked at her, if someone had stared for more than a few seconds, they might have seen it. Her skin had a very soft glow, like moonlight hidden under the surface. Not bright, not enough to call it strange, but enough to feel different. Her eyes were gray, but when the streetlights hit them, tiny silver lines moved inside the iris, like little streams of light. Most people thought it was some rare eye modification. Some thought it was a fun beauty trick. No one guessed the truth. Lyra was not human. She was Vakari, and she was hiding every morning. Lyra rode the Skytram to school with the other students of Marlow 3 Central Academy. She sat near the window, hands closed around the strap of her bag, and watched the city glide past. She listened to the chatter around her, but did not join. She knew the names of the other students. She knew where they liked to eat, what games they liked to play, what music they listened to. But they knew almost nothing about her. That was safe, her guardian had told her on the first day. They arrived on Marlow 3. Blend in, Lyra. Do not stand out. This world is not ready for what you are. So she blended in. She got average grades on purpose. She never raised her hand too often, even when she knew the answer. In sports, she ran slower than she could. In tech class, she pretended not to understand at first, so the teacher would not notice how quickly she learned. She could do so much more, but every extra thing was a risk. That morning, the sky was a pale blue, and weak sunlight slid across the glass of the tram. Students leaned against the poles and checked their wrist screens. A group of boys at the back laughed loudly about a game they had played the night before. A girl listened to music with glowing headphones. Only one person seemed as quiet as Lyra. He stood near the door, holding the rail in one hand and a small notebook in the other. He had short dark hair, a plain blue jacket, and a serious face. Even though he did not look much older than Lyra, his name was Jace, and Lyra had seen him many times at school. He was not loud. He did not seem to have a big group of friends. Like her, he had a way of watching the room without trying to be part of it. Their eyes met for a moment. Lyra quickly looked away, her heart jumping. Did he notice her staring? Did he see anything strange? She pressed her back against the seat and forced herself to breathe slowly. No, she told herself. To him, you just look like any other girl. Stay calm. At the next stop, the tram voice spoke in a calm tone. Central Academy Station. Please exit to the left. The doors opened with a soft hiss. Students poured out, filling the walkway bridges that crossed between the towers. Lyra stepped onto the bridge and fell into the flow of bodies, heading toward the Academia wide. Silver building with bright blue windows and the school emblem glowing above the main entrance. Today was different. Today was the day of the field trip. Posters had been up all week. Now visit the old research complex, learn about Marlow 3's history. Teachers stood near the entrance, holding tablets and checking off names as students lined up. A tall woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile walked along the line, making sure everyone was present. Good morning, students, she called out. I'm Instructor Hale. Today we are visiting the North Ridge Research Facility. It is no longer active, but it is an important part of our colony's past. Please stay with your group and follow instructions at all times. Understood? A scattered yes instructor rose from the students. Lyra answered softly with the others. She tried to keep her voice steady. Old buildings made her nervous. Old systems were worse. Old systems could fail. And when things failed, people got scared. And when people got scared, they noticed strange things. Like girls who glowed from the inside. She clutched the strap of her bag tighter. "Hey," a voice said beside her. Lyra turned and found herself looking at Jace. He stood just a little closer than before, his notebook now tucked away in his bag. "You're in Group C too," he said. His voice was calm, maybe a little shy. "Right?" Lyra blinked. "Yes, Group C." He nodded as if that simple fact made sense, then looked ahead again. He did not say anything else, but he also did not move away. For a reason she could not explain, this made her uneasy. She was used to people ignoring her. She knew what to do when people ignored her. Being noticed, even a little, felt dangerous. The ride to the Northridge facility took about 30 minutes. They traveled in long ground vehicles that hummed quietly over the smooth black road. Outside, the city faded away, replaced by low hills, scattered trees, and old supply towers that no one used anymore. The sky seemed bigger out here, and the air looked clearer. In the early days of Marlowe 3, Instructor Hale explained from the front of the vehicle, the Northridge facility was built to research energy fields and gravity control. It was one of the first labs on the planet. Many of the systems are now shut down, but the structure is still stable. Today, you will see how science helped shape this colony. Lyra sat near the window, staring at the distant shape of the facility as it appeared on the horizon. It was huge, like a fallen giant. Old metal walls rose in sharp angles, and empty crane arms reached out over cracked concrete. Some parts of the structure still gleamed in the sunlight, but others were dark and rusted. Her palms were starting to sweat. Old energy fields. Old gravity systems. The kind of tools her people had once mastered and lost. She closed her eyes and tried not to think of home. Not the home she had now, but the one far away, the one that no longer existed the way she remembered it. That life was over. This was her world now. This planet. These humans. "The school, are you okay?" The quiet voice made her open her eyes. Jace was looking at her again, a slight frown on his face. "I'm fine," Lyra said quickly. "Just thinking about the facility?" He asked. "Yes, it looks—" Oldie gave a small smile. "Old things can be interesting. You can see how people used to think. What they tried. What they feared." Lyra studied his face for a second. He spoke like someone who liked to notice details. That made him dangerous to her, but also a little familiar. Vakari children were trained to see details, to feel energy fields, to see the lines between things. She looked away again. "Maybe," she said. The vehicle stopped in front of the main gate. A security drone floated down from a platform, scanned the group, and beeped a greeting. Metal doors slid open with a long, low sound. Inside, the facility was cooler. The air carried the faint smell of metal and dust. Lights flickered on in the ceiling as they walked in, triggered by motion sensors that still worked. Wide halls stretched in different directions, marked by old signs: Gravity Lab, Energy Field Test Room, Control Center. "Instructor Hale, is everything safe here?" One student asked. "Of course," she said. "All dangerous systems are offline. The only active tools are the ones that control light and doors. Just stay with your group." Lyra could feel it as soon as they walked in. A pressure in the walls. A kind of echo, not of sound, but of energy. It brushed against her skin like a weak wind. The machines here were mostly dead, but not completely. Some of the old power lines still held small currents. Not enough for humans to notice. Not enough to light a bulb, but enough for a Vakari to feel. Her heart beat faster. She lowered her head again and tried to walk like everyone else. Not too fast, not too slow. Instructor Hale led them down a hall and into a large observation room with a wide glass window. On the other side of the glass, they could see a circular chamber with strange towers rising from the floor and wires stretching across the ceiling. This was Gravity Test Chamber 1, Hale explained. Here, scientists experimented with changing the pull of gravity in small areas. The system is now locked, but you can see the equipment they used. Lyra stared through the glass. The towers were familiar. Not the design, but the idea. Humans had tried to do with metal and wires what her people could once do with a simple motion of their hands. Suddenly, the lights flickered once, twice, then everything went dark. A few students yelped. Someone laughed nervously. A soft alarm tone echoed in the distance. "Everyone stay calm," Instructor Hale called out. "It's probably a simple power glitch. Stay where you are." Lyra did not move, but inside she was not calm. That weak pressure in the walls grew stronger, like a hidden storm awakening. Old systems clicked on, then off, then on again. It was trying to start after years of sleep. Then they heard a deep, grinding sound. The floor trembled under their feet. What was that? Someone whispered. The glass window in front of them rattled. In the chamber beyond, one of the tall towers shook, its base shifting on the cracked floor. Lyra's eyes widened. She could feel it now, the energy lines in the facility. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. The moment the tower had fallen, the entire room had fallen silent. The students stared at her, eyes wide with shock, some even taking small steps backward. Lyra stood frozen, her hands still trembling from the strain of controlling the tower, her mind racing. How long had she been holding it? A few seconds? A minute? It felt like an eternity. Jace's gaze was locked on her. His eyes were wide with a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and something else. Something Lyra couldn't quite read. In that moment, it felt like the whole world had paused. All attention focused on her. She quickly turned her face away, trying to breathe through the panic that surged inside her. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was not how she had planned to live here. No one was supposed to know. Instructor Hale was the first to break the silence. Her voice was tight but calm, as if she was trying to control her own shock. "Everyone, stay calm. We need to move out of this area now." Students slowly began to shuffle, some moving toward the door. Others still staring at Lyra. Hale moved to the front of the group, waving them forward. "Please, this way quickly. There's no need for further panic." Lyra stayed behind, stepping away from the crowd, trying to make herself small in the corner of the room. She could feel their eyes on her, and the weight of their stares pressed down on her. It felt as though she could no longer hide. The secret was out. Her glowing skin, the force of her powers, it was all exposed. Jace was still standing near the doorway, his gaze fixed on her. He hadn't moved, hadn't looked away. She couldn't read his expression, but she could feel the intensity of his gaze. It was as if he was trying to understand her, or maybe figure out what to do with the truth he had just learned. Lyra felt her breath catch in her throat. She couldn't face him. She couldn't. There was no way he would just forget what he had seen. Instructor Hale called again, more urgently this time. "Lyra, you need to come with us." With a final glance at Jace, who was still standing there, Lyra walked quickly toward the exit. She kept her head low, trying to avoid anyone's gaze. But she could feel the weight of their eyes on her, could hear the whispers following her as she left the room. The trip back to the city was quiet. No one spoke. Lyra could hear the hum of the transport vehicle as it moved smoothly over the road. But the usual chatter of the students was missing. They sat in silence, a heavy, uncomfortable silence that seemed to press down on everyone. Lyra kept her eyes on the floor, her hands in her lap, trying to hide as much as she could. She wanted to disappear. She didn't want to be here. She wanted to be anywhere but in this vehicle. Everyone looking at her as if she were some kind of monster. She glanced up once, meeting Jace's eyes through the crowd. His expression had changed. He no longer looked surprised or frightened. Instead, he looked thoughtful, deep in thought, as though he was processing everything that had just happened, as if he wasn't judging her. And that made her feel even more uncomfortable. What was he thinking? Why wasn't he afraid of her? Most people would have run away. Most people would have called for help, or screamed, or at least demanded answers. But Jace hadn't done any of those things. He had simply watched, as though he were trying to understand her. Lyra tried to push the thought away. She couldn't think about him now. She couldn't let him figure her out. If she did, everything would be ruined. The vehicle stopped outside the school. The students got out quickly, eager to escape the tension of the field trip. But Lyra stayed behind, waiting for the others to leave. She didn't want to face anyone right now. Not until she could figure out what to do next. When the vehicle was empty, she stood up slowly, about to step off, when a voice stopped her. "Lyra." She turned. It was Jace. He had stayed behind too. His face was unreadable now, but there was something in his eyes. Something. Searching, she tried to act casual, to sound normal. "What do you want, Jace?" He hesitated for a moment before stepping closer. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." Lyra felt her heart skip a beat. Was he serious? He knew what she was now. He had seen her powers, her true nature, and yet he was concerned about her well-being? "I'm fine," Lyra said quickly, her voice a little too sharp. She didn't want his concern. She didn't want anyone's concern. It only made things worse. "You don't look fine," Jace replied softly. "You're shaking." She felt her hands tremble. She had been trying to hide it, but he was right. Her body was still reacting to the stress of what had just happened. She had barely controlled the tower from falling. The strain had been almost too much. Lyra looked away, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. She didn't want him to see her like this, weak and vulnerable. "Jace, please," she said, her voice quieter now. "You shouldn't be talking to me. You shouldn't even be looking at me." He didn't step away. Instead, he took another step closer. "Why? Because you're different. Because you're not human?" Lyra flinched. It felt like a slap to the face, even though he hadn't meant it that way. She had worked so hard to hide what she was, and now he had just said it out loud, as if it was a simple fact. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You don't know what I am, or what I've been through." "I know you're not like everyone else," Jace said. "But that doesn't make you dangerous. You saved us, Lyra. You saved all of us." "You didn't hurt anyone?" Lyra's chest tightened. "You don't get it. You don't know what could happen if anyone else finds out what I can do. If the wrong people see what I can do." Her voice trailed off as the weight of the situation sank in. "I have to keep my powers hidden. If anyone finds out who I really am, I won't be safe here anymore. No one will." Jace looked at her with a mix of confusion and concern. "But why hide? Why pretend to be something you're not?" Lyra shook her head. "Because if I don't, it's not just my life that's in danger. It's everyone's." Jace frowned, clearly not understanding. "But you can control it, right? You can control your powers?" "Not always," she said quietly. Sometimes they get out of control. Sometimes I can't stop them. I don't want anyone to see that side of me. It's dangerous." Jace was quiet for a long time, and for a moment, Lyra thought he might just walk away, finally afraid of what he had learned. But instead, he said something that surprised her. "I won't tell anyone," he promised. Lyra stared at him, her heart thumping in her chest. "What? I won't tell anyone," Jace repeated. "I don't care what you are. You're still just Lyra. You're still the same person who helped us. I'll keep your secret, but you don't have to hide from me." Lyra didn't know what to say. She had never expected this. She had always expected people to be scared of her, to run the moment they saw the truth. But Jace wasn't scared. He wasn't running. He was standing there, offering her something she had never asked for, understanding. For the first time since everything had gone wrong, Lyra allowed herself to take a breath. "Thank you," she said softly. "But you have to understand, Jace, this is bigger than just us." "I understand. But we'll figure it out, okay? You don't have to do this alone." Lyra felt something in her chest loosen. It wasn't much, but it was enough. A small glimmer of hope flickered inside her, like a candle trying to stay lit in a strong wind. It wasn't a promise that everything would be okay, but it was the start of something she hadn't expected. Maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to carry the burden alone after all. The following days were not easy for Lyra. After the field trip, her life became a quiet storm of tension and worry. Every time she saw Jace at school, her stomach tightened, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Her secret, the one she had hidden so carefully for so long, was no longer hers alone. He knew. And the worst part was, he didn't seem scared. But Lyra couldn't forget how close she had come to revealing everything. One moment of uncontrolled power, one mistake, and it could have been the end. She would be hunted. The people from her past would come for her, the ones who hunted her people, the Thrix, the ones who had destroyed her home. She didn't want Jace to know about that. About her past, it had been nearly impossible to push the thoughts of the disaster on the field trip away. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the falling tower, the crackling energy she had pulled from deep inside her to stop it. She had never revealed that much of her power in years. It had felt too easy, too dangerous. What if the next time she couldn't control it? What if someone got hurt? Lyra. The voice pulled her out of her thoughts, and she looked up to find Jace standing in front of her locker. His brow furrowed in concern. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you okay? You've been off these past few days?" Lyra's heart skipped. She hadn't realized how much she had been avoiding him until he spoke. She had tried, really, to act normal. But she felt different now. The way he looked at her, like she was just another person, wasn't something she was used to. Most people didn't look at her like that. They looked at her with curiosity, fear, or complete indifference. Jace didn't seem afraid. But that made her nervous in a way she couldn't explain. "I'm fine," she said quickly, trying to sound calm, but she could feel the tightness in her voice. "Just busy with schoolwork." Jace didn't seem convinced. "Lyra, you've been acting like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. You know you can talk to me, right?" Lyra hesitated. She could see the honesty in his eyes, the genuine concern he had for her. She had never felt this kind of care before, not from anyone. But she couldn't talk to him. Not about the things that really mattered. Not about her true nature. Not about the past she had buried. "I don't think I can explain," she said, looking away. Jace took a step closer. "You don't have to tell me everything. But if you're carrying something heavy, you don't have to do it alone." "I'm here, Lyra." Lyra bit her lip, feeling a wave of frustration rise inside her. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to just let it all out. The fear, the guilt, the loneliness. But she couldn't. Not yet. If she opened up now, everything would change. Jace wouldn't look at her the same way again. He wouldn't understand. He couldn't. "Just drop it, okay?" Lyra said quickly, her voice sharper than she intended. "It's nothing." Jace blinked, clearly taken aback by her tone, but he didn't back away. "All right, but I'm here if you need to talk." He gave her a soft smile before turning to leave. Lyra watched him walk away, her heart heavy in her chest. She felt like she had just pushed away the only person who might understand, even though she knew she had no choice. Her secret was too dangerous. Jace was kind, but kindness wouldn't protect him from the consequences of knowing too much. That evening, after the school day ended, Lyra found herself walking aimlessly through the streets of Marla 3. Her thoughts were a blur, a mess of fear, confusion, and guilt. She wanted to escape her own mind, but it felt like there was nowhere to go. The city around her was buzzing with life. Humans rushing to their homes, families laughing, the bright lights of neon signs flashing. Marlothra felt alive, and yet Lyra felt like a stranger in the middle of it all. Every corner, every street, every sound seemed to remind her that she didn't belong here. She had no right to be here, and the more she thought about it, the more her fear grew. What if Jace told someone? What if he couldn't keep her secret? She turned a corner and almost bumped into someone. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, was standing in her path, his hands in his pockets. He looked human, but there was something about him that made Lyra's heart race. Something off. Something dangerous. "Excuse me," she mumbled, quickly trying to step around him, but he moved, blocking her path. Lyra, isn't it? Her blood ran cold. How did he know her name? She hadn't seen him before. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I've been looking for you." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She took a small step back. "What do you want?" "Relax," the man said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I'm not here to hurt you. But we need to talk." Lyra's mind raced. She didn't recognize him, but something about him was all too familiar. There was a coldness in his voice, a certain heaviness to his presence. He didn't belong here. not in the crowded streets of Marlow 3. He wasn't one of the regular humans. And then it clicked. Her blood turned to ice. The Thrix. She had been running from them for so long, hiding, but they had found her. The man saw the recognition in her eyes, and his smile widened, showing teeth too sharp to be human. "Ah, I see you remember. Good." Lyra felt a wave of panic rush over her. She had to leave. She had to escape. But her legs wouldn't move. Fear held her in place. The man was still smiling, but she could tell he wasn't here for small talk. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice shaking. She tried to keep her composure, but her fear was growing. "I'm someone who's been tracking you for a long time, Lyra," the man said. "The Thrix haven't forgotten about you, and they won't stop until they have you." Lyra took another step back, her mind racing. How did they find her? How had they tracked her this far? "You'll come with me," the man continued. "No more running. No more hiding. It's time for you to face the consequences." Lyra's heart was hammering in her chest. She felt the power stirring inside her, but she wasn't sure she could control it. She couldn't risk revealing herself again. "Not here. Not now. I won't go with you," Lyra said, her voice steady. Even though she could feel the panic building inside her, the man's smile disappeared, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. "You don't have a choice." Before she could react, the man reached into his coat and pulled out something shiny. It was a small device, but it hummed with an energy that made Lyra's skin prickle. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet felt unstable. The energy in the air shifted, becoming heavy and oppressive. She couldn't breathe. Her head swam, and she felt dizzy. "You don't understand," the man said, his voice now low and menacing. "The Thrix don't take kindly to disobedience." Lyra stumbled backward, trying to get away, but it felt like the air itself was pressing against her. She could feel her powers stirring, pushing against her control, but she couldn't let go. "Not here. Not in front of him. Leave me alone," she shouted, her voice cracking with fear. She pushed against the pressure, trying to summon her power, but it felt like her energy was being drained away. And then, from the corner of her eye, she saw him, Jay. He was standing at the edge of the street, watching them both with wide eyes. He had followed her. He had heard the commotion. But why was he here? Lyra felt a surge of panic. "No, Jace, stay away." But it was too late. Jace stepped forward, his eyes locked on the Thrix man, its expression determined. "Let her go," Jace said, his voice firm. Lyra's heart skipped. No, this wasn't part of the plan. Jace couldn't be here. Not now. He didn't know what he was getting into. But the man only laughed. "You think you can stop me, human?" he said. "You're in the wrong place." Lyra felt her chest tighten. This was it. The moment she had been dreading. But then, something unexpected happened. Jace stepped forward again, and this time, something in the air changed. A crackling energy, not like hers, but somehow similar, began to build around him. His eyes glowed faintly. Lyra gasped. What was happening? The man looked confused for a moment. "What is this?" But he didn't finish his sentence. Jace's energy surged, and the Thrix man was suddenly thrown backward, slamming into a wall with a powerful force that left him stunned. Lyra's mouth fell open in shock. Jace had powers too, and now everything had changed. The sound of the Thrix man crashing into the wall echoed through the quiet street. Lyra's heart raced as she stared at Jace. For a moment, she thought she had imagined it. The energy surrounding him, the way he had effortlessly thrown the Thrix man back with just a single step, it was like nothing she had ever seen before. Jace wasn't just an ordinary human. He had power too. Lyra blinked, her mind spinning. She took a hesitant step forward, her eyes never leaving the man who had fallen to the ground. The Thrix agent groaned as he slowly pushed himself up, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. His cold, calculating gaze flickered from Lyra to Jace, his expression one of disbelief. "You think you can stop me, human?" The Thrix man growled, his voice low and menacing. "You are no match for the Thrix. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Jace stood tall, his expression determined but calm. The faint glow in his eyes had faded, but there was something in his stance that told Lyra that he wasn't afraid, not anymore. He had just defended her. And the more Lyra thought about it, the more she realized that Jace had known something she hadn't. The man wasn't just a threat to her, he was a threat to all of them. To everyone on this planet, I won't let you hurt her, Jace said, his voice steady. His words were quiet but strong, as if he had already made up his mind. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Jace didn't know who the Thrix were. He didn't understand the danger. But here he was, standing between her and the agent, without a second thought. He was putting himself at risk for her. She felt a surge of warmth in her chest, but also a deep sense of dread. The Thrix man smirked. You think you're a hero? He spat. You're nothing but a fool. You don't understand the war you're about to be dragged into.
Ow.
Lyra felt her blood run cold. The word war echoed in her mind, and she couldn't help but think of the past. Of her own home, her people, the Vicari, and the destruction the Thrix had caused. She had barely escaped, had hidden here for so many years. And now they had found her. They would stop at nothing to take her back. She turned toward Jace, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't know what you're getting into. This is bigger than you think. Jace turned to her, his expression softening for just a moment. I know more than you think, he said, and I'm not going to let them hurt you. The Thrix man sneered and pulled something from his coat, another device similar to the one he had used earlier. The air around them grew heavier, and Lyra could feel the change immediately. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet felt like they were glued to the ground. The Thrix agent raised the device, and a pulse of energy shot toward them. Jace reacted instantly, stepping forward and raising his hands. There was a crackle in the air, and the pulse of energy bounced off an invisible shield that surrounded him. Lyra gasped. The power coming from Jace wasn't just physical, it was something deeper, something she couldn't fully understand. But she could feel it. It was like her own power, only raw. Unrefined. You have no idea what you're up against, the Thrix man hissed, his anger building. He reached for something else in his coat. His movements were fast, almost too fast for Lyra to track. But she knew it was something dangerous. Without thinking, Lyra stepped forward. She wasn't going to let Jace face this alone. She didn't care if it was dangerous. She couldn't let him be hurt because of her. The Thrix man raised his hand, preparing to strike again, but Lyra acted on instinct. She felt the familiar energy surge within her, the power that had kept her alive all these years. She stretched out her hand and focused all her energy into one powerful push. A wave of force erupted from her, knocking the Thrix agent backward and sending him crashing into the nearby building with a sickening thud. The ground trembled beneath her, and the air buzzed with the electricity of her power. For a moment, there was silence. Jace's eyes widened in shock. But there was no fear in his expression, amazement. He turned to Lyra, his gaze full of awe. You did that? Lyra nodded, still breathing heavily, her heart racing. Her skin had begun to glow faintly again, but she was too tired to care. She was used to this, feeling used to pushing herself past her limits. But the weight of the situation was starting to set in. The Thrix agent wasn't down for long. He was getting up, his movements jerky and filled with rage. You're going to regret that, the agent spat. He reached for something else at his belt, and Lyra could see the glint of metal, a weapon, no doubt. She knew that he wasn't going to back down. Get out of here, Lyra, Jace said quickly. His voice was low, but urgent. Run, I'll hold him off. No, Lyra shook her head, the refusal burning in her chest. I won't leave you. You don't have a choice, Jace said firmly. This is my fight too now. You're not in this alone, but you need to get to safety. If he gets the upper hand, we're both done for. Lyra opened her mouth to protest, but before she could speak, the Thrix agent lunged toward them, his weapon raised high. The energy around him crackled, and Lyra felt a jolt of fear. She could feel the sheer power of the weapon, the destructive force that it carried. There was no way she could stop it with just her own strength alone. But Jace wasn't done. He stepped forward, raising his hands once more. This time, the air around him shimmered, and the ground beneath their feet shifted. Lyra felt a surge of energy, a deep pulsing power that filled the air and seemed to bend the space around them. Jace was using something beyond his physical strengths, something he had kept hidden, something that was not human. The Thrix agent shot first. The weapon's energy blast shot out, a bright flash of light. But just before it hit, Jace raised his hand, and the energy pulse shattered midair, scattering into the sky. The force of it sent a shockwave through the street, knocking everyone back a step. The Thrix agent staggered, surprised by the strength of the barrier that Jace had created. "Impossible," the agent muttered, his eyes narrowing. He reached for his belt again, but before he could react, Lyra stepped forward. This time, she was ready. With a powerful motion, Lyra extended her hands, summoning all the energy she had left. It surged from her, more forceful than ever before, and crashed into the Thrix agent. The blast hit him full force, sending him flying backward into the street. He landed with a heavy thud, unmoving. Lyra's body trembled with exhaustion. She had never used so much energy in one go, and it felt like every ounce of strength had been drained from her. Her legs buckled beneath her, but Jace was there, catching her before she could fall. "You're okay," Jace said softly, his voice warm but full of concern. He steadied her, keeping her on her feet. Lyra shook her head. "I couldn't have done this without you." Jace's expression softened. "I told you, you're not alone in this. We're in this together now." Lyra's heart swelled. She didn't know what it was about Jace that made her feel so safe. She had spent so long running, hiding, but now, for the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone. The Thrix agent was down, but they both knew this wasn't over. The battle was just beginning. "We need to move," Lyra said, her voice urgent. "They'll send more." Jace nodded. "I'm with you." The streets of Marlow 3 were eerily quiet after the battle. The distant hum of traffic and the faint sounds of the city's bustling life felt like they came from another world. For the first time in what felt like years, Lyra allowed herself to stop and catch her breath. She leaned against a concrete wall, her hand pressed to her forehead, trying to calm her racing heartbeat. Jace was beside her, his eyes scanning the street, ever watchful. The Thrix agent they had just fought was down for now, but they both knew that wasn't the end. The Thrix were relentless. They wouldn't stop until they had her, and maybe not even then. "We need to move," Lyra said, her voice low but steady. She could feel the lingering hum of her powers in her chest, but it was quickly fading, replaced by exhaustion. "The Thrix will send reinforcements. We don't have much time." Jace turned to her, his face filled with concern. "Are you okay? You look like you're about to collapse." "I'm fine," Lyra replied quickly, though her body ached, and her legs felt like they might give way at any moment. I need a moment." "We both do." Jace didn't argue. Instead, he kept a lookout, his posture tense. Lyra had never seen him like this before, so serious, so focused. He had always seemed quiet and reserved, but now he was showing a strength that surprised her. He was more than just a human boy. He was capable of so much more than she had ever expected. "You're stronger than you look," Lyra said softly, glancing at him. Jace looked at her, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But when I saw you, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just stand by and let them take you." Lyra felt a pang of guilt. She had never wanted Jace to be involved in any of this. He had no idea what he was dealing with. The Thrix weren't just an alien faction. They were ruthless, dangerous, and far too powerful. If they found out that Jace had helped her, they would come for him too. And she couldn't let that happen. "We can't keep running," Lyra said, her voice firm. "I've been running for years, Jace, but I can't do it anymore. We need to stop them, here and now." Jace frowned, looking at her with concern. "Are you sure? It's not like we're fighting normal people here." "The Thrix, I know," Lyra interrupted, "but I can't keep hiding. It's not just about me anymore. The whole planet could be at risk if we don't stop them." Jace's expression softened, and he nodded slowly. "Then let's do it. Together." Lyra felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. It wasn't just the words. It was the way Jace said them, like he truly understood. He wasn't afraid anymore. Neither was she. The weight of everything, her past, her powers, the dangers ahead, seemed a little lighter now. They were in this together, and somehow, that made everything seem more possible. The two of them moved quickly through the dark streets of Marla 3. Taking shortcuts, avoiding the main roads where the Thrix could be waiting, Lyra's mind raced with plans, trying to figure out their next move. But as much as she wanted to fight, she knew they couldn't take on the entire Thrix army alone. They needed help. She couldn't keep relying on her own powers, not with the danger she faced. The Thrix were relentless, and they would stop at nothing to capture her. She had to get to the safe house, a place where she could regroup and plan her next move. But getting there would be no easy task. "Do you have any idea where the safe house is?" Jace asked, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Lyra shook her head. "I have a rough idea. It's not far from here, but we need to be careful. The Thrix have eyes everywhere. They'll be watching the streets, the sky, even the sewers. And we'll have to be smarter than them," Jace said, his tone resolute. "We'll find another way." Lyra looked at him, surprised. She had expected him to be more uncertain, more afraid. But he wasn't. There was something about him now, something that made her believe they had a chance. "All right," she said, her voice steady. "Follow me." They slipped into the shadows, moving silently through the city. Lyra led the way, her senses alert to every sound, every movement. She felt the familiar pull of her powers deep within her, but she kept them in check. She couldn't risk revealing herself again, not yet. Not until the Thrix were dealt with. The journey felt longer than it actually was. Every corner they turned, every building they passed felt like a potential trap. But they kept moving, staying out of sight, using the narrow alleys and forgotten streets that no one else ever used. Finally, they reached the old industrial district. The buildings here were abandoned, the streets covered in dirt and grime. It looked like the perfect place to hide. Lyra knew the safe house was near, hidden beneath the ruins of an old warehouse. It had been a place of refuge for the Vakari, a place where they could lay low and regroup during the worst of the war. They crouched behind a rusted wall, peering around the corner to make sure no one was watching. The safe house was just a few buildings away, but Lyra felt a knot in her stomach. She had never been so close to safety, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "This is it," Lyra whispered. "We just have to get inside." Jace nodded, looking around carefully. "You lead the way." Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped forward. She had never been so nervous about returning to this place. The Thrix might be closing in, but she had to trust that the safe house would provide them the cover they needed. Just as she reached the entrance, the ground shook. It wasn't a small tremor, it felt like something much bigger. Lyra froze, her body instinctively bracing for an attack. "Did you feel that?" Jace asked, his voice tight. Lyra didn't answer. She had already felt it, and her fear grew with every passing second. The Thrix were here. They had tracked her down, and they were closing in fast. "Move," she shouted, grabbing Jace's arm and pulling him toward the entrance. They rushed into the building, making their way down into the basement where the safe house was hidden. They hadn't made it more than a few steps inside, when a loud crash echoed through the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal tearing. Lyra spun around, her eyes wide with panic. "They found us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We don't have much time." Jace's eyes darted around, his hands clenched into fists. "We're not giving up. We can still fight." Lyra's chest tightened. She knew Jace wanted to help, but they were outnumbered, and the Thrix were too powerful. She couldn't let him get hurt. "We have to get to the control room," she said quickly. "It's the only way to stop them. The main systems are underground." They ran down the narrow hallway toward the control room, the sound of heavy boots echoing behind them. The Thrix were closing in. Lyra's heart raced, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Not now. They reached the door to the control room, and Lyra quickly punched in the security code. The door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with old equipment. In the center of the room stood a large control panel, its lights flickering. "This is it," Lyra said, moving quickly to the panel. "If I can activate the backup systems, we can block the Thrix's signals and prevent them from tracking us." Jace stood by the door, watching the hall behind them. "You can do this, right?" Lyra nodded, her fingers flying over the controls. "I have to. There's no other choice." The sound of footsteps grew louder. The Thrix were almost here. Lyra's heart raced as she connected to the system, her mind merging with the ancient technology. It responded to her touch, its energy flowing through her like a current. The old systems were slow, but they were still powerful. With a final command, she pressed a button, and the system hummed to life. A pulse of energy spread through the room, and the lights flickered back on, brighter than before. "They won't find us now," Lyra said, her voice filled with relief. She slumped against the control panel, exhausted but grateful. They had won. Jace stepped toward her, a soft smile on his face. "You did it. You really did it." Lyra looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone. Together, they had faced the impossible and won. But even as they celebrated their small victory, Lyra knew that this was just the beginning. The Thrix would be back. And when they returned, Lyra and Jace would be ready. They had no choice. The fight for survival had only just begun.